and welcome back, Doodle Crew fans. We are here with another interview, and today I am sitting down with the lovely Mayor Squish, also known as Nicole. Hi, Nicole. Thanks for sitting down with me.
Hi. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, heck yeah. No, you've been with Doodle Crew since the very beginning, which is awesome. I'm so glad. Also, fans, I would like you to know that this person is the amazing mod behind our streams, the one who got all of the prompts set up so that when you type names into chat, they pop up. She also researched how we could get suggestions from you guys in and tallied so that I didn't just have to remember them, because that was not a thing I was going to be able to do. So huge props to that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. So jumping right in, we'll do this. How did we meet, Nicole?
So we met online through mutual friends. I'm not sure. Friends. Yeah, so should I talk about them? Should I show them on stream or on this interview? So we met through Botched, which is a D&D podcast, and you had done art for them, and I was listening to them, and somehow through like that whole streamer podcaster family, we ended up meeting, talking to each other. Yeah. It's funny because we met before we had talked to each other.
Yes, which was very fun. It was Botched is the reason that I ended up at DragonCon 2019 and really like started this whole online streamer podcast journey, and really a big part of why Doodle Crew happened. So yeah, thanks to Botched, even though they're insane. But yeah, and that was something exciting, especially because I already knew that you did art and were good at art and liked doing art, but you had the know-how of being on camera and streaming and working through Twitch. That was huge. And a lot of the other artists that I asked to come on Doodle Crew were digital artists, but hadn't worked in that part of it. So those two parts together, yes, again, selfishly, I was just like, no, I have to have her on this.
So. I'm glad you thought that, because I mean, honestly, when you approached me, I was like, so you want me to mod, right? But then you were like, you can do art with us, and I was like, oh, okay, that's no pressure.
Yes. Yeah, I think I pitched it out to everybody as this super chill thing, and then I think a lot of the responses I got back were like, wait, you want us to do what? And I was like, no, it'll be fine. But hey, look at that. We made it here, and we're fine.
Yeah, and it is fun, but it's like when you're being presented with, oh, you're going to be on stream with other professional artists who do this for a living and like freelancing and stuff, and I'm just like, I do this because it's fun. So...
Oh, we're so happy to have you, and it's awesome, and I love it because literally everybody brings a different style, a different process of how they got to making art, and it's just fun. I'm very selfish. I just love it. So no, I'm so happy. So I have a silly question because of the way that we met and our proximity. But I'm asking everybody: are you an alumni of the Art Institute of Pittsburgh?
No, I am not. Although you guys are everywhere, I'm not one of them.
Yes.
I am an outsider.
That's okay. We need it. We need that like basis in reality at times because it's our weird little cult. But along the lines of your actual personal art journey, how long have you been making art?
So I think I was always kind of interested in just like drawing, and like when I was in middle and high school, I had gotten somewhat good at it. I was more like realistic pencil drawings, and I hadn't really messed with any other mediums. But by the time I had gotten out of high school, even like leading up to my senior year, things got so crazy with school and trying to graduate and pass all my finals that I kind of stopped drawing, and I stopped drawing for a long time, even when I went to university for a little while. I did not get a degree, but that's fine. So that was also just kind of busy, and I didn't really have time to draw. And so I think it was last year or the year before where I like sat down and I was like, this is something I used to do all the time. Why don't I do it again? Because it was fun. It's like you just doodle along, or you try copying something from a photo just for yourself. And I sat down and I tried to draw a portrait, and I realized I had forgotten everything. So right now it looks like I haven't drawn at all. well, maybe not right now, but when I started it, it was like, this looks like I've never put a pencil to paper before. So yeah, but honestly, like, because this is Doodle Crew related, Doodle Crew has helped me a lot because it's like, yeah, we sit down and we draw. And like, you make time to do this almost. And it's like,
Yeah.
I have a responsibility to do this also because like in my day-to-day life, I'm like, well, I could be doing this instead. I should be doing this. I should be cleaning my room. I should be, doing whatever. But with this, it's like, no, I'm hanging out with, friends and friends of friends to draw, to be creative. And it's really helped me.
I'm so happy to hear that. Again, I will say it's the exact same thing for me because even though I work professionally as an artist, I still don't always make time for myself to just do art for fun. And I need it. And we'll talk about it a lot. And I think it's true across a lot of us. Art is very much a muscle. And if you just like working out, just like playing sports, if you don't do it for a while, you get rusty. And that can be incredibly daunting to come back to, especially something that you had felt so comfortable in before, to then suddenly be like, oh, this doesn't work. Like, I know how to draw a face in my brain, but I can't make it come out my pencil anymore. And now I'm frustrated. And so, no, I absolutely get that and still deal with that on a regular basis. So as you said, you do art because it makes you fun. What is your primary job or career that you're planning aside from art?
So right now I'm not doing anything. I am studying to get into medical school, which is a full-time job in and of itself. But yeah, I used to study computer science, which was also very hectic because you code all the time. It's a full-time job. But yeah, I feel like now, even when I do get, or if I do get into medical school, I feel more comfortable using art kind of as my downtime activity. Whereas before I would just like play a game or like watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, I mean, at the same time, it's like, this is also a skill that might help me because like, especially if you're working on a smaller scale, like you develop that muscle memory, but for like small things, which is helpful when you're a doctor. So I hope to continue doing it and have time to do it.
Yeah. No, I think again, everything comes back to having time and finding time to do what we have to do and then also do what we want to do. But wow, I'm just so happy. I'm always so happy that you come and play with us and hang out, and it makes me very, very happy.
It's always fun.
Yay! So as we talked about working in pencil a little bit, and then I know you and I have worked together on watercolor. But what is a medium that you personally love to work in?
I mean, you just said it, watercolor. And funnily enough, Doodle Crew is the reason I got properly into watercolor. So a little bit of backstory, I had been watching artists on YouTube that use watercolor as their primary thing. And some of them, they did portraits, which is not something I thought was quote unquote possible because my education in high school was like, yeah, we draw like kind of abstract stuff with it, maybe landscapes, which is what I do currently, or like just like gradients, and then you draw something on top with something else. But watching people like draw portraits and animals and objects it kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities. And really, when you think about it, the medium you use shouldn't dictate what you do with it. Obviously, like when you do watercolor, filling in larger areas is really easy because the water and the paint just flows. But also you don't have to like do big things. You can be detailed and you can do portraits and stuff like that. But then where Doodle Crew comes in is we have another Doodle Crew member, Laura. She works in watercolor primarily. And she was on a couple episodes that I wasn't on. And I watched her do this and I'm like, yeah, this is doable. Like for some reason, like it was always this like secluded thing of like, watercolor is for professionals. Watercolor is something that is difficult, completely just unattainable.
Yeah.
Don't even try it because you're going to suck at it. But
Yeah.
seeing someone who is actually like tangentially in my circles do this is like, yeah, this is a thing, and maybe you shouldn't be scared of it or think that you can't do it for some reason. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, I asked for a watercolor palette for Christmas from my parents, and they very graciously bought me one. And that just kind of started everything. I now have expensive paints and more paints. But yeah, Doodle Crew is kind of, it was kind of the, okay, that's the last push you need to actually try it.
No, and I think that's a huge thing that you said is, and especially even to me, like I worked in watercolors in high school, but it always felt very inaccessible. Like it felt like one of those where you had to be good at it, and that's the only way you can do watercolor. And I think that's a prevalent idea when it comes to art in any sense, that you can only do art if you're good at it. And no, like you should be able to play. And especially like you said, like you have other goals, you have other aspirations for your career. So art can just be that fun hobby that you can still work at and take pride in, and, you know, blood, sweat, and tears and stress into. But it can be something where it's just like, no, I do this because it brings me joy. And I like that idea. And I, you know, I hope that people who hang out in our chat and listen to us talk, and even when we're ragging on our own art, like they understand that, no, you could do this too. Like, you know, we'll happily tell you what supplies we're using. And even, you know, you and I talked about it on the watercolor stream we did. Like I picked up a little watercolor palette, one, because I thought it was a really cool setup, but also it wasn't that expensive. So if the paint sucked, okay, like I'm not at that much money, but I've got a new toy to play with, and we got to make some cool stuff with it. Like I was very happy with how the piece turned out. So yeah, I like that openness to play, and kind of, I don't want to say getting permission to do it, but seeing somebody else who you know as a real human, not just a celebrity on the internet or a famous artist or someone that you follow that has millions of followers. Like, no, this is a person I know. Like we've talked through Discord. Like she's a real human and she's doing this. I'm like, I could do this. So no, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Laura's awesome. I'm hoping chat that we'll also get to interview her as well. But so going off of ones that we're comfortable in, what's a medium that scares you?
Oh, there's a couple. The one thing that is like, I don't even want to try it is like pastels, like those little blocks. First of all, because it's super messy, and I'm just like,
so messy.
I'm good. I'm good. But also like, because it's a messy medium, I feel like the control isn't quite there, which it seems weird for me to say because watercolor doesn't have a lot of control sometimes either. But it's just that it's messy, and, you know, like there's pigment fallout that can get everywhere, and it's just, it kind of scares me because mess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's weird to see artists, especially when we are creating chaotic things, to think of us as control freaks, but sometimes we are. And texture of paper and texture of our art supplies, like this matters, and it affects how we create art. Like I know, so I'm in a town that is very famous for glass art, and I am terrified of glass art, of actually making it myself, because I can't touch it. Like a whole thing that I do is put pencil to paper, and I have this tactile interaction with the item that I'm working with. You can't do that with glass because it's thousands of degrees and you will burn your fingers off, and I can't do that. So there is a mystery to me with that, because I can't wrap my brain around how would I work within this medium, because I can't touch it the way that I'm used to touching clay or metalwork or stuff like that. So yeah, I absolutely get that.
Yeah, and a lot of the, like, I don't want to call it non-traditional, but like clay sculpting and all that kind of stuff, like decoupage, is like, it looks cool, but I feel like it would be such a journey almost, that I'm not sure if I want to get into that and invest all that time to get to something that I'm happy with, which sounds weird because you shouldn't shy away from things that are new. But also I'm like, yeah, I have my couple of mediums that I'm still working on and still learning, and I kind of don't need to add more. But also, like, you know, generally, like with 3D, I'm really bad with 3D for some reason. It's weird.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, especially as all of us, so none of us are in high school anymore. A lot of us are no longer in college or school of any kind. So in school, that's the beautiful time to try all the mediums, to do all the things, especially because often you don't have to pay for the supplies because they already exist there, which is great. But I think once you get out of it, and especially as we've been talking with a time crunch, focusing your efforts on stuff that not only makes you happy, but things that you want to improve in, I don't think you're doing a disservice to yourself by not going into some of the other mediums, not cutting yourself off from them completely. But like, I don't enjoy scrapbooking. I'm not good at it. I don't enjoy it. Like, I am in awe of people who are really good at it because their books look so cool. And I sit there and I'm just like, I have no idea how you did this. I mean, like, logically I understand it, but I couldn't do this. But I don't want to. Like, I would so much rather give you my photos and have you make something beautiful for me, and then I'll draw you something and I'll make you a logo for your scrapbooking company, and that type of kind of trade-off, which is really fun. But yeah, it's strange. Art is so strange.
Indeed.
So I'm going to wrap up with one last quick question, and then we are actually going to move into a second part of this segment, which is new and different. But for you personally, what have you found to work through an art slump?
This is an interesting question because I find myself in a slump all the time. Whenever I like sketch something in my sketchbook and it doesn't turn out the way I want, I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna like not do art for a while. I'm good for now. I'll just find a different thing to do. But ultimately, it's like sometimes you just see something that's like, this is pretty. I kind of want this in my style. I'm not sure if I have a style, but when and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but when we were watching Loki, just Tom Hiddleston's face is so interesting to me. And in some of the scenes of the first episode of the new series, he was in profile. And I was like, I kind of want to try doing portraits again. And then I did that. And it turned out okay. It doesn't quite look like him, but I was happy to get back into something that I used to be good at or I used to enjoy. And I think sometimes you just have to switch it up with what you do. Like if you're something who does portraits all the time, try painting an object or even like a landscape if you have a medium that is good for that, or just trying something new and kind of experimenting with that. Because at the same time, like there's not as much pressure because you're not expecting yourself to live up to your own skill set.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, I've never done this before, but this could be fun. And if it doesn't turn out, then it doesn't turn out,
Yeah. No, I think that's incredibly well said, with essentially taking the pressure off yourself, because like, no, this isn't my normal thing. So if it doesn't turn out, it's fine because no one's expecting it. And my memoir and other games I play with my brain to get it to do art.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of, and it's kind of a cheesy thing, but I really do believe it, in that you can kind of get random bursts of inspiration from any sort of thing. Like, obviously, I think Tom Hiddleston is inspiring for so many reasons, but also he brings a lot of character to the character of Loki. He's doing a lot from the acting sense, which again, a totally foreign craft to me that I don't understand, but I am in awe of. But that's inspiring. And then to have that mean that you want to translate that into your own art in some way, I think is great. And I think that's why sometimes, well, it can feel counterproductive to sit and watch something or sit and listen to a podcast. You're allowed to take a break from creating your own art and go and appreciate someone else's art, because I think that can be incredibly helpful. So, hey, speaking of appreciating podcasts, I'm going to bring in our second special guest. So, bring you in. Welcome. Soapbox Klotz, hello.
Hello.
Hi, welcome. So, for Doodle Crew viewers who are watching, Soapbox Klotz was awesome enough to come in and moderate on a couple episodes of Doodle Crew and hang out with us and chat with us, and also just be super awesome supporter in chat every week when we're doing this. And Yeah, and because one of the questions that I had for my Doodle crewmates was, what is a project you're proud of? I kind of wanted to also bring Paul in because the amazing Paul and Nicole have their own awesome project. And whether they're proud of it or not, I want to make them talk about it because I think it's cool. So I'll let you guys take that away.
So it's me.
Well, yeah, I've just been talking for a while, so it's your turn.
Your turn.
Well, Nicole and I started a podcast called Crash Test Pilots, where we watch the first episode of television programs, and just sometimes we're going in blind, sometimes it's something one of us has seen, sometimes it's something that both of us have seen, though that rarely occurs, generally not the case. We occasionally have wonderful guests on, like yourself. And
So
most recently, our friend Scott Moore of DragonCon Digital Media Track, and a whole slew of other projects. Go check out the new episode when it drops, and he'll list them all because they're numerous. And yeah, so we just kind of like wanted to approach it like, what is this first episode of a show? Like, how does it hit? Just that episode. You know, and we've covered everything from like cult classics to fan favorites, some of the most popular titles out there, stuff that's concurrent, stuff that's older. We've kind of run the gamut at this point. We're in season 5. We have over, I want to say we have at least 70 episodes now, or close to.
Heck yeah.
Which is insane. So yeah, we've been doing it for over a year. We have an episode most weeks. We sometimes take a week off in between seasons and such. And yeah, it's been a wonderful ride. And it's been interesting because if you listen to our early shows, they don't sound anything like what we sound like today. And I think that's for the best.
Well, I think especially even when it relates to Doodle Crew, I think you look at like our first couple of episodes and we were still figuring out how to be on camera with each other and how to create art in a studio together or in a Comic-Con setting, but we're not. We're digital, and any of our interactions are coming through chat. They're not coming through people actually coming up and talking to us. So no, I think it's all a part of this figuring out how to kind of get comfortable in this particular medium, which I think is the way that it works across any art medium. So it fits.
Yeah, to that point, you know, this isn't my first podcasting rodeo, and all the different shows I've been on have been a little different. You know, chemistry with your co-hosts can be pretty different. What you're trying to achieve with the show can be very different, and it's you have to kind of like feel it out. You got to give it some time. A lot of times too is you got to get the legwork in, feel it out, and then make changes. And it's a wild ride sometimes. Like you can start, for example, Breaking the Panel, my big show that I was on for 5 years before we started this show. Or well, we started the show while I was still on it, but we spun that out of From the Helicarrier with Brian Ibbett and Charles McFall covering a Marvel video game that you played on Facebook, because we kept spending the second hour of the show and longer talking about like the MCU and what was going on with DC television and basically fandom, like just comics and fandom and other games we were into. And the next thing you know, it's like, well, we have a show here. Like we have a whole nother show here. And so we spun that off and we started the Giant Size Team Up Network, and it grew many hairy legs, and you know,
many hairy legs.
It did, yeah, exactly. It did what weird, creepy, hairy leg things do and skittered all over the place. But like our show, like what we started with FTH was way different than what we eventually arrived at with Breaking the Panel, because like Brian, for example, really likes structured, kind of like your morning talk show stuff. And we were like, no, we want to have like panels. We want every episode to be a panel, like to just riff.
Yeah.
And so we were all over the place. And we've done the same thing with Crash Test. You know, when we started Crash Test, it was important to us to have structure. and I had a little checklist, and you can hear me in the episodes going through my checklist. I used to sit on my monitor right up here, and I go, yeah, okay, we talk about the characters, we talk about pacing, and eventually one day Nicole's like, honey, I don't like that we go through the checklist. And I was like, oh, but you're the queen of structure, and I'm the wild, chaotic mountain man. And she's like, let's get a little wild with it then. And I was like, all right. And yeah, so we stopped doing that. And now we get off into the weeds about weird stuff sometimes. And sometimes I let Nicole edit and she chops 40 minutes out of an episode.
You're never going to let that go.
No, it's the funniest thing ever. We recorded over an hour, and the episode we put out was 35 minutes, and we didn't have a guest. It was just the two of us. We also just recorded with Scott this week, and I told him, yeah, we usually shoot for like a half an hour, 45 minutes, definitely under an hour. We went like an hour 15, and he's like, yeah, definitely under an hour, right? I was like, you get talking.
You do. No, and I think one, I love the fact that your show covers such a wide variety of shows. Like, there's literally something for any TV viewer. And like you said, it's older pop culture stuff, it's newer pop culture stuff, it's stuff I hadn't heard of, it's stuff I had no intention of watching, but I was like, I kind of want to hear what they have to say about it. But I also love that, again, it ties right into streaming, that creative nature. We constantly talk on Doodle Crew that while we have a set topic for what we're going to draw that week, what actually happens in our conversation, in the conversation with chat, none of that is ever what I expect it to be. Like, we go off on the most random things, but it's fun. And that's something that you can't script. And I know, there have been times where just because of amazing suggestions in chat, I've either then been immediately inspired to draw something, or I've saved it and we're like, no, we're going to bring this back and we're going to draw it later. And it's just that it is the coolest feeling to tap into that mutual creative energy. And I love it because a lot of people in our chat, they aren't necessarily artists. They have an incredible appreciation for art, but they aren't artists themselves. And yet, like, they are so in it and so with us on that. So to that point, speaking to that point, Paul, do you not consider yourself an artist?
No, not really. I dabble a little bit with painting miniatures. That's basically a coloring book in 3D form. It's fine. I do try to be creative with it sometimes, but I hate everything I do and I throw it back in the stripper afterwards. Yeah, the sea of gray miniatures just plagues me forever. So Nicole has tried to encourage me to sketch and draw a few times and do things, and this sounds so defeatist, but it doesn't click for me. I am a huge appreciator of art. I love art. And I appreciate technique, and Nicole and I will watch artists do their videos, and I'll watch you guys on Doodle Crew, and I enjoy it so much. I love watching artists create, and I've watched other like high profile people like Jim Lee streaming comic art, and it's like I'm watching him re-sketch a panel that he did 20 years ago, and I'm just like, but he's just chatting with everybody, and it's amazing. We live in an amazing digital world where there is such a dearth of content creators who are either streaming or making YouTube videos or doing both. And I don't necessarily have to be the person who's putting art out into the world to be part of the community. And I love that. And a lot of time, I have spent way more time watching people paint miniatures, talk about painting stuff, watching videos with Nicole than I have painting my own stuff, putting a pen to paper, any of that. And I'm fine with it. I'll sketch once in a while. I hate everything that I do, but I mean, I know that's like a qualifying feature of an artist, but
literally everyone. I'm pretty sure in every interview we do, we're going to be like, yeah, I sketch stuff, then I hate it, and then I keep going. That's just how I live.
I was not born with the gift of art. I was born with the gift of gab. So I've accepted that.
Yeah, but I think, again, it's a lot of with Doodle Crew, obviously, because we focus on a hand-drawn aspect of things for a lot of the episodes, but there really is sound like I'm tooting my own horn, like a celebration of creativity. And that's why, again, the episodes you've been on, I've been so happy because usually as someone who is being the mod for it, to have someone who is so comfortable asking great questions and having good conversation, like you take that and you just go, and I get to sit back and enjoy the art that I'm doing and the conversation that's happening, and you take the reins on that. And that's a skill I've been impressed with you for a very long time. And it's something that I had to learn how to do. And I'm still like, there are times where I'm just like, oh my gosh, that was really good. Like he set that up and then he asked this question because he knew he was going to do this and it just worked. And I was like, it's sorcery. I don't know how you just did that. Whereas I'm sitting there drawing a hand and you're just like, yeah, I don't know how you just did that. So I don't want to hear it. Like, so I think there's a beautiful creative energy to it. Again, no matter which media you end up outletting that to.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I've really enjoyed sitting and moderating with you guys because I get to ask the questions that maybe the audience is thinking but doesn't voice, or I get to ask questions that I've had for years. I recall one that I brought up was like, you know, the difference between fine art and like illustration, and is illustration art? And like, it's such a touchy subject in the fine art circles, and I know that. And that's why I wanted to hear the opinions of actual working artists, you know, people who are earning a living or supplementing their living with their art. And because quite frankly, I think it's complete bupkis to say that illustration isn't art, because illustration touches so many people. You know, Doodle Crew is a testament to that. Like when you guys do an episode where you do Saturday morning cartoon mashups and stuff, the chat is alive with the energy of our youth, like the nostalgia, and we're all reminiscing and we're sharing our reminiscing with each other. And because, you know, the audience and those participating, it's a little bit of a shotgun blast across several generations.
Yep.
We're getting like, I have never heard of that show from Nicole for literally everything.
This is true.
Even within like our own cohort, because if I recall correctly, Swan, you and I are relatively close in age, and you guys will start talking about a show and I'll be like, this must be like a guy versus girl thing, or you must have gotten a channel growing up that I didn't get because I never heard of that show.
Yep.
And it's amazing because like that stuff was so formative for us. Like it informed our taste. It informed the things that we love. Like, and I think back, one of the things I've been begging you to do is to do a watch party to watch Eye of the Beholder, the D&D art documentary that's on Amazon Prime, which I've already seen, but I want to watch it with you because I know growing up in the 90s, I was astounded by quote unquote older fantasy art, like stuff from the 70s and the 80s. And like, it sparked my imagination. And so did all the television and cartoons and stuff that I grew up with. But like that stuff was like, this is so, it brought vibrancy to worlds that I only had in my mind.
Yeah.
And then in our lifetime, we've seen like something like Lord of the Rings, the films get made where their style guide is almost entirely based off one artist's interpretation of Tolkien and just his work poured out on the cellophane, like just incredible.
Yeah.
And so I might not be an artist, but I'm a huge appreciator of art. And I know that a lot of us connect to art, whether we think we're artists. And I want to know the artist's perspective on a lot of stuff too. So it's a incredible joy every time.
It means so much to me. And I love how you said that with the connection to art and the connection to the vibrancy. And I think, again, something about the fact I will never forget being in college and being really young and suddenly being surrounded by people who were just as excited to talk about the cartoons of our youth as I had always been. And while I had those conversations in high school, it wasn't the same because these people weren't watching the cartoons with the like, oh my gosh, did you see those couple of frames where like the eye went really wonky? They're like, oh my gosh, I know that must have been the other studio that phoned it in. And like, I hadn't gotten to nerd out in that way with people previously. And so I love that because again, with the collective shared experiences that we've all had on Doodle Crew, we come at it from different places. We come at it from different time periods and from different upbringings of what we were allowed to watch or encouraged to watch. And I think there's that beautiful preservation of that kind of childish enthusiasm about art and cartoons and movies. And yeah, like in talking about D&D, like I remember kind of getting dragged into D&D by somebody else, but then falling in love with not only like the game as it is, but also the art. Like the art in the books. I'm like, I don't even care if we're playing right now. I'm like, I just want to look at the pictures because this art is really cool. And it was, again, something I had no idea existed. And so the opportunity to introduce people to things that we are passionate about or we get excited about or just make us laugh, like that's, yeah, I don't think there's anything better than that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you look back, you look at somebody like Larry Elmore, and you know the pages he did for second edition Dungeons and Dragons, like just, and the other guys in the studio crew, because they outsourced some art, but they hired a bunch of artists full time, and at a time when nobody else was doing this, like a publishing company hiring like 4 or 5 studio artists and having them on hand and not paying them nearly enough at the time. But
yeah,
like what they were doing is just incredible, and it created a shared world for all of us. And I think that there are Dungeons and Dragons in particular are so mainstream now, and I think it's wonderful because it is so artistic. It's artistic in the sense of all the illustrations that were made for the books and for products that go with it, and the miniatures and everything that's been done. The really weird 80s animated show where in the very first episode,
weird.
the party fights Tiamat. Like, okay, whatever. Let's just fight the god of evil dragons. Like, no problem.
Why not?
Why not? But like all of that, but then also like, you know, authors and world builders and just storytellers. And we live in an age now where it's mainstream. Like you got stuff like Critical Role that and many other projects that have normalized it and made it accessible to millions of people who maybe never got a chance to play or never got exposed to it. And it's not just about playing. It's like this whole sandbox of stuff. And there's all these amazing creative people that are in it. And you probably don't know half their names, but you might have seen their work.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And it's an exciting time because it's exploded just in the last 20 years. As a fan myself, I've seen it go from being like the thing that the smelly neckbeards did in their dungeon basements to the thing that like mainstream high profile Hollywood A-listers do and talk about with interviewers. Like,
yeah,
oh yeah, I love playing D&D. I mean, you got like Vince Vaughn playing in a group with I think Tom Morello, and I forget who the DM for that group is, but like it's like, what? Vince Vaughn? Wedding Crashers? Swingers?
Really? Okay.
And the guitarist from Rage Against the Machine? And Joe
Manganiello.
Yes, I can never say his name.
Yep. Him and Vin Diesel. Like the fact that Vin Diesel was like, no, the tattoo that I had on my hips, you know, for XXX is the name of my D&D character. I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, his Drow Witch Hunter that he based part of Riddick's personality on, and that he also then made a really bad movie about. Don't get me started. I love Vin. Like, Vin, you're a legend. But like, oh boy.
Again, we don't always love all the art that we create.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think it was especially cool. So we had the opportunity to have a D&D episode of Doodle Crew, which Nicole was on, and I went into that one being like, yeah, this will be fun. Like, I like drawing D&D characters. I've illustrated, you know, a few people's interpretations of their characters, but again, because, you know, you were in chat that day, so we could ask you specific questions about the actual technical aspects of D&D. We had everybody on stream who's either played or is play adjacent or currently playing and all of that. And we ended up building not only cool characters that we got to draw live on screen, but we got to develop backstories. We got to almost have our own little pseudo D&D thing as we talked about these characters and interacted with chat. And I remember, like, we were going to conclude the episode at one point. We ended up going like an hour past that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it was just so cool. And it was so many people coming at it from so many different ways that it was so much fun. It ended up being like, I had a stupid fun amount of time, like on that episode. Like it was just, I'm still buzzed about it. And it was weeks ago. So yeah, it's really cool. And I again, I'm so happy that people like you are willing to come and hang out with us and share in that shared insanity, but also just the joy and the fun of it, because I know as an artist, sometimes we need that, because it can be really easy to be very critical in our heads and critical of our art and critical of our craft. And so again, we talk about getting permission to just be light and silly and funny with it and have people be like, yeah, that's great. I think that's so important. I think, again, it's the self-care that artists need sometimes that we don't always afford to ourselves.
Or ever, in the case of my fiance, who hates everything that she does. And I'm like, babe, it's great.
I mean, accurate though.
No, and it's just been it's been so much fun, and I'm so happy. But so in wrapping up, I want to start with Nicole. But where can people find your amazing art, find more of you, follow you, support you, do all of the things to find more of your stuff around the internet?
Well, I am at Mayor Squish on Twitch and Twitter and Instagram. Twitch is a little bit irregular. I used to stream every week. I don't anymore. Maybe I will again, I hope. But yeah, sometimes I upload art to Instagram. Sometimes. But yeah.
Also, if they want to see your amazing watercolors, they can go to your Etsy.
Yeah, you can.
I love them.
I'm Mayor Squish Art on Etsy. However the Etsy link works, I'm never sure. I think it's etsy.com/shop.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But as always, like, it's scrolling here at the bottom. If you ever have any questions, just hit us up anywhere. We'll send you links. And Paul, where can people find you and follow your stuff?
You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Soapbox Klotz, and you can find me with Nicole on Crash Test Pilots. You can find us on Twitter with that show as well. Please tweet at us or email us at Gmail, crashtestpilots@gmail. If you have ideas, if you listen to an episode and you had feedback, if you want to join the conversation even just a little tiny bit, you can even say, hey, I want to be anonymous. I just wanted to say this thing. We'll shout you out without saying your name. Please contact us. That's the only thing. That's the big hurdle that we have not yet vaulted, is like getting someone other than like close friends that we talk to all the time to like chime in. I know people are listening. I can see the listening statistics, and I know it's not just M hitting play 6 times a week. So, hit us up if you got an idea. Granted, at this point, we've hit so many things. Like when we invite guests on, like when we invited Scott this season, he's like, so what have you guys already covered? And I'm like, tell me what you want to cover, and I'll tell you if we've covered it.
Yep.
So we literally do have something for everyone. Go check it out and see what you think. I'm sorry it's not the most high quality edit because I'm not an audio producer, but it comes from a good place. We're passionate, and Nicole hates most things, and I like almost everything. And that leads to some really interesting situations.
No, it's wonderful conversation, and it's a lot of fun, and obviously, again, because you said, you're very critical of it, so it's obviously something important to you, because that's how we do as artists. But no, it's super fun, and definitely, Paul, I super want to have you back again on another episode of Doodle Crew, because it's always great having you. Yeah. Yes. So no, this is awesome. Thank you both so much for sitting down with me and chatting with me and chatting art and passion, because you guys are awesome. And I leave our conversations feeling so buzzed and excited to do stuff. So thank you.
Thank you for having us both.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.